card over the phone. This is what I have mastered.
Is he a president or something?
Founder of the men's movement.
Okay, I can't listen to that.
I've sat quietly.
It's like the stereotype we've been battling since day one of starting the process.
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll fit into today's rebel without a cause kind of conversation. I apologize there. I had an urgent D. Spicy food.
Oh, urgent D. What is that? Oh, got it.
Okay.
I mean, is it okay to call out people at this point?
We're not, well, we don't know.
Like that stuff is so cringe. I can't handle it. That fake president that has programs for men that's ruining it for anybody that's ever interested in doing a men's group because it just looks so stupid.
Yeah.
And his marketing is everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I love it. I can make like the astronomical claims that they make. 32 million a month in personal development coaching. It's like, where? How are you?
Have you never worked on yourself? Do you not even know what a coach is? Doesn't matter. You can be a self-development coach in 14 minutes.
14, yeah. Yeah, the 1 minute work week.
This is going well. So, yes, today we're talking about struggle and perseverance and honor and where do we put our energy when we know that struggle is an inherent part of life, right? Animals struggle, we struggle. I think sometimes there's a perception in a certain group of people, which I think is the vast majority, that at some point we can escape the struggle. And there's different types of struggle. We have physical struggle, which could be in their third world countries where we're struggling to survive. We have psychological struggle, which can be a lot of the things that we deal with in some of the Western countries and more developed countries, as we like to call them. And then we have our emotional struggle, which is everything else, and everyone experiences that.
I would add in also just spiritual struggle. You know, that's kind of the essence of the Dark Knight, is the same thing that connects that spiritual, mental, emotional, physical is actually like a disconnection from reality. And that's why it's called struggle, right? It's the lens which you view your fight, your motion, right? What you're swimming against is out of line. And I think it feels like a dead end because it's almost listless. And that's where, like, when you're kind of touching base on some of the people out there that are just like discipline at all costs. And it's like, well, if I haven't vectored where my discipline goes, then I could end up in some really bad places. And obviously we can see how that could be like, well, if I don't try, I don't ever move. And that's not what we're talking about. And we're not negating discipline. It's just before you embark on that voyage, if you will, start to calibrate yourself so that you can turn this struggle into that next level, which is a healthier expression of it, as you mentioned, perseverance, where your actions aren't blind. And yes, we come into the world kind of blind, if you will. You know, many creatures come in literally blind, sensorily blind. It's just the blindness comes when others instill their struggle, their wounds, their patterns onto you, and then you inherit those struggles.
Hold on, cat fight.
Uh-oh. Cat struggles.
A little bit of a cat. Okay.
What was up with the kitties?
There are a couple dogs. So sometimes the cats are outside now. Sometimes they'll go walk up to dogs that are like on leashes, but they do the whole like creepy walk where they're not super happy about it, but they're very curious. And the owners are so sweet. And then every once in a while, like it'll be a little dog and the dog will just freak out when the cat gets really close. And my cats are so dramatic. They'll just do the cat scream, you know, and run away. And it sounds horrible, but they're just being little drama babies.
So you're just introducing them to the neighborhood, right? This
Yeah.
is like their first kind of week out and about, and they're getting their bearings.
Yeah, and they're causing a scene.
They're
Anyway,
they're persevering and struggling all at the same time, right? Yeah, to kind of like pull us back on track, I actually, obviously there's a big question that comes in there, right? Is like, how do I calibrate struggle and perseverance? How do I turn one into
Yeah.
the other? I do think we got to back up a little bit. Struggle still implies that you're in the fight, and which implies some kind of movement or motion, right? Some kind of shift. And I would argue that that's still a little bit better, although potentially more dangerous. There's lots of people who struggle in the world and create extreme ramifications and repercussions of fear. But I think below that is some kind of like apathy, you know, like one of the lowest states of consciousness where you are so beat by life that you have no more struggle in you. You become apathetic. And I don't think it's like necessarily a black and white where I'm apathetic or I'm not. I think we can have parts of ourselves that become apathetic. We become through life, little slivers of ourselves are pulled off at, you know, for society, for others, to mold, to for this embetterment of something. And I kind of say it that way because I don't think that ever giving up your true self is actually the answer the universe wants. I think the universe wants the full, real, authentic expression of yourself. And that's how we become more healthy. However, there is this apathy that can build, right? We can have parts of ourselves that remain apathetic while we still struggle or even still persevere. It's not a, I don't have apathy, I don't have struggle, but it means I persevere. It's like we can have parts of us that we remain apathetic to, that we bury away in silos. And every now and then they get rooted up and they're really difficult to deal with because you can imagine anything that's able to compress you into apathy is a strong force. And I think if people genuinely and honestly visit their lives, they'll see, oh man, I'm apathetic to this person or this aspect of myself, which kind of leads to concepts of dishonesty, right? If you have an apathy, you're probably a little dishonest.
Well,
So,
yeah, I mean, let's just make it really simple though. I mean, sometimes apathy can come from a very powerful source, but in I think most cases it's pretty boring. Like it's a pretty non-remarkable onset of just habitual little bits of struggle bus here and there until you start to get used to that, and it becomes your new normal. Um, a lot of this might seem like semantics, but it's nice to know these words. Richard Rudd would use struggle as almost like this verb. It's just a thing. It's like walking or running or sleeping. Struggling is a form of movement forward against something, right? And the difference is, when is it suffering and when is it perseverance? And that suffering would be when we use that struggle in aspects of our lives that just don't matter,
yeah, I like
right?
that.
Like, yeah, it's like this uh just worrying and being fussy and being angry about little crappy things that don't actually push us towards our next evolution. Now, there are little annoying, mundane things that we have to do in life, but it's the struggle through them that's not totally necessary. A lot of the things that we have to do in our everyday life are fairly easy to do. They're just kind of like annoyances, right? Whereas if we were to use that struggle that's inherent in us, that's inherent in the tree that grows through the cracks of a rock, or an animal that's surviving through winter, like this actually super powerful force of evolution that keeps us alive, and we put it towards something that's really meaningful, that's where it becomes perseverance. And that's where we can really find that meaning in this struggle.
Yeah, I like that. I just like back up a little. Um, I like that, like you said, apathy is usually this almost like drip torture that leads you there. You know, it's so long. Um, and that's probably because if there's something worth fighting for, you know, you never, until you give your last breath, you will remain unapathetic
Mhm.
from those. But it's those daily egoic, like bombardments from social medias, from caustic, toxic relationships, from that almost certain toxic internal dialogue you have, that narrative that's been handed down that drips every day and it just like backs you into a corner.
Well, like
So
you drip on yourself. Like we have to be real about that. It's all self-induced
I
torture.
would say almost all of it. Yeah, for sure. It's certainly self-perceived, right? You can choose to react to that environment however you choose to.
Mhm.
And like, as we'll kind of hopefully get to, I don't know if we will, but like, how do we start to choose these differences? And I would just add that, struggle and suffering in this case, we're kind of using them a little bit interchangeably. And I think one of the sure signs that you're suffering or struggling without purpose, which is all struggle, again, semantics I just said, is it's almost like an addiction to the pattern. You play it out and almost fully know it's non-serving. Now, there is obviously parts of this that remain deeply sub and unconscious, and those are they take a little more time to root out, but that's what you do. You remove the very high level conscious sufferings or struggles, and then they make way for the other ones to kind of, okay, here's your other ones, like on a deeper, say, emotional wounding level, or it doesn't even have to be wounds, and they start to kind of show there's facets, and then you can like chunk them apart and so on down through basically like what we could kind of just allude to as our nervous system or our individual experience of reality. And through that, obviously if we had a society that raised like really enlightened humans, we wouldn't run into any of this problem. They'd be able to find this from childhood on. They'd tune their bodies so well, I believe, that they could inherently do this. What happens is a lot of adults come to this point where they're like, oh man, I've been living out someone else's myth here. I'm not living out my authentic self. And that's where it really dawns on them. I've been struggling in these directions. I've been struggling in this direction. And maybe in there is like a perseverance, right? Think of parents with kids. They do a lot of things in the name of their children. And I think as we carry on this conversation, we'll show how that might not actually be honoring them. It's a very short-term scale if we look at it. But overall, if we zoom out on it, we start to see how we're not actually honoring each other almost at all. We're struggling as individuals, maybe as families and maybe as small communities, but it's like a struggle against each other, and therefore can't move into like those higher warrior levels of perseverance. It's something like that,
As somebody who doesn't have kids, it's really cool to see parents who are doing that, who choose themselves just a smidge over their kids, and to see how independent their children end up to be, how loving and in tune and kind their kids are, and how they both have a better relationship because mom and dad aren't so resentful, like lovingly resentful.
Mhm.
It's pretty neat to see.
Well, you think about an adult in that child's life that projects from healthier places, which can only be achieved by, the greatest battle there is, and that's the war against yourself, right? The one where you remove the dualities, and move into a more non-dualistic framework, and all of a sudden you're changing the paradigm for what you're raising your children in. And it's really, I think it is a beautiful thing. And obviously with like the program, like the process, we see that quite a bit with men, and obviously with our friends and community and whatnot, we see it with the mothers as well. But all of a sudden they're like out of nowhere. Sometimes some of these guys, they run into what they call a midlife crisis. But it's really truly, I think, a calling. And I think it's that. It's like, okay, you're at a point in your life where you can be discerning, where you can choose to authentically find your values and live them out. And I think that's kind of a good start point to start moving into the concept of perseverance outside of suffering and struggle. Is what do you value? What do you really value? What does your heart and soul value? And you start listing those out, like literally listing them out, and then see if you live them. And I think most people would be very surprised to see that most of their day is spent in opposition to their values. Not everybody, there are some people who are really keen on this kind of work and really put it to use. And then that's where we'll start to see the perseverance, because then you start to see like if I take like what might seem like kind of one that most people should have on their list, but health, say food, water, sleep, movement, and where I use my attention. Well, we look at that and we look at how, is our food really healthy? Is the water I drink really healthy? Are people trying to steal my attention and manipulate it? Am I moving right? And you start to look at like, well, why is that? And it's like this societal construct, and yourself, of course, you're always to blame. And you start to see, well, I'm not actually living out these values. Or sometimes I think it could go where you think you are, and you're hitting the gym all the time and you're high in cortisol all the time. And it's like, I see it quite often with dudes where they're like, I'm all roided out and jacked as I could ever be, and I'm more depressed than ever. And it's like, wait, that's because you're not actually like living out the value here. You're just struggling, you're not persevering. And what'll happen is, once you have that ever evolving potentially value list, and then you put that with the energy of the fight, of the struggle, if you will. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic a word as fight. That's where we start getting into the warrioress and warrior area, where every now and then you'll see these people pop up and they're like, well, I recognize the root or a deeper portion of that lineage, if you will, that line, that I'm going to persevere and try to change, or I'm going to persevere, and maybe I don't have to change anything. I just have to change how I'm moving through this world. And that really is an interesting place, because I think once you start in that realm, that's where the universe really tests you, really puts the weight on your shoulders, and it's like, are you sure? You sure you want to break free of this paradigm? Because that's the scary place, right? That's where the sheep were main sheep, and those that rise up, I don't want to I don't know what not being it. They're just a free sheep. It starts to happen. It's not like you transmute.
Did you start your sensitivity training?
I did,
Free
yeah.
sheep. So you don't want to offend the sheep out there.
Oh yes, I don't. I should mention that nothing I say is offensive, right? Because it's funny. No, just kidding.
It has to be funny.
It
That's
has to
the
be
rule.
funny.
If it's borderline offensive, it's got to be a knee slapper. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
cancel in time.
What the truth is I know that you and I show up here not wanting to offend. We both want to just learn. And that could be like a really good time to address things like, if you're going to leave comments, we're cool with that, but they better be positive. No, I'm just kidding.
That's not true.
No, it's not true. It's like, come from a place of perseverance, sure, where you're like, hey, you know what? These two really need to change their point of view for some reason. And that's good. Anyhow, that's enough about comments. So,
Okay. So
I want to ask you a question, Jess, before.
Yes.
What do you think are some hot tips, oven mitts on, to move from a state of struggle or suffering into a more perseverance-like state?
Well, I know that we've talked a bit about what is the difference between struggle and perseverance, but I want to give like a real world example. Let's say you're a woman and you're dating somebody, or your husband, right? And he is like complaining about something bullshitty, Like, oh, like just, stuff that doesn't matter.
This
Like,
never
God,
happens, by
the
the way.
garbage, the trash bag doesn't fit in the garbage can. Isn't that annoying? And just like a lot of little things like that. And it sounds like this guy is on the struggle bus for no reason. Like these are, I guess we would call them third world problems, right? And that is like the most icky, cringy energy to get from a man. Sensitivity training aside, just as a stereotype, I feel like that's some yuck. I don't like it.
So don't whine.
Don't whine, but it has that flavor of struggle. Like I'm struggling through life, Oh, my boss. Oh, these blah blah blah. Oh, I have to get the oil change. It's like, oh, fudge, man. Because then, as for me, I have to then be like, step it up, dude. You got this. And I don't want to invalidate one's feelings. I'm not talking about you, by the way. Maybe sometimes, but when a person, when a human can shift that energy of struggle, because like we were talking about, it's inherent in us. There's no way, unless you're completely untethered and you're high all the time, to not feel that sense of struggle. It's a part of the human experience, a very purposeful part, but you send that into things that are really meaningful. And so I think that is like the hot tip there. What is meaningful? To even understand what that is important, right? But you take that same struggle into that, then it's like, ooh, that's some sexy energy. That's very hot. So I'm not looking for nice, happy guy all the time. I'm looking for a warrior, that warrior energy. But if it's placed in how annoying the garbage is, it's like not cute.
Yeah. Okay. So Jess, the ultimate at setting the safe container for people, huh? It's funny you mentioned
I'm
that
being very
because
honest. I know it doesn't sound good, but I'm being very honest.
oh, no, I think this is as we're going through this, I don't know if it's a revolution or like kind of an evolution, but where men especially are re-exploring their emotional tool chest. And you hear it a lot where women are just like, they don't want that whiny baby energy, like, and it's like, okay, well, okay, how do I express these emotions, because we're not necessarily equipped to really project them super well and explore them. And like you said, though, it can anything toxic delivered into anything good is going to potentially infect it. Enough of it will infect it, right? So you take this whiny garbage can issue and and you put that into your relationship that's supposed to be, this sacred union, and it'll slowly infect it and pull it apart. And obviously she's alluding to much more than just the trash. And um
Well, yeah, okay, so let me continue on with this.
she has a really
I can use you as a great example gently because there are times where
You're a
when
master
you
at this, aren't you?
you
I'll use you as
know
an example. Sorry, go ahead.
when you stub your toe or you hit your head or something, you know that that's your red flag of like, okay, I need to slow down. And things like there's a lot wrong happening that has happened before you get to that point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've
So,
upregulated to a point to where you have made a lot of these little things the problem, where actually it's not. When you pause and you take a step back and it's like, none of this is the problem. None of this deserves any of my energy around the struggle that's reserved for the things that are meaningful, because I think we only have a certain reserve of actual struggle before it turns into apathy and laziness.
not only that, it could even like the great warrior battles, you still need to like feed and rest and decompress. That's the cycle. You can only be in the underworld for so long fighting the trash can. Um, um,
And okay, so I use you as an example because you're so persevering. So it's funny to talk about how like normal you are too.
um,
How
yeah.
fussy you could be sometimes.
Well, I don't get fussy. Let's not put that out there.
I get
We'll just
fussy.
edit that word out. No, the stubbing the toe example is a really good one. So some people, this will show up differently. We all have different waveforms, but one of the way, like I guess a neural anatomy is set up is I have kind of this like move before look energy if I'm compressed, if I'm stressed. And the more stressed I am, the more I move without looking. And this will show up differently for other people, but stubbing my toe, um, is a great example. I don't normally bang my body into objects. And when that happens, it's like, oh, okay, big breath, look around. Oh, damn, I'm moving too fast on all these things. And then you slow down, and then all of a sudden the trash bag of life fits, and okay.
Hallelujah.
Um, Jess used a big word there though. She just kind
Thank
of
you.
threw it out. Yeah, it was like a couple syllables. Um, just kidding. But she used the word meaningful, and like, how do you pull meaning? So like John Vervaeke, the Meaning Crisis, guys and gals, is a good place. He's got this easy to digest talk. And I laugh because John's kind of part of the Super Genius Club, and he talks a lot about how you pull meaning out of something, out of an emotion. It can be like a thought, it can be an experience, and the meaning is like kind of the why this is happening, if you will, or maybe more accurately, it's what can I take from it? What is the meaning I can pull from this? And sometimes it's nothing, and that's where we can get locked in and we can push too hard. And the key to it though is like just said, we were like kind of danced around it, is just slow down, create a pause. Because what'll happen is if you don't do this, and this is how most people live out their entire lives, is it's just going to be too frantic and too much chaos, even though it seems like it's all order, because that's what we're struggling to do, right? Move things from chaos to order. And then I would add this. Oh, you want to go? Go ahead.
Yeah. Richard Rudd has a beautiful metaphor, or just like an example of how the pause works in the natural world. Like flies flying around, every once in a while they'll land on your arm or something. And we find it as such an annoyance, like, this fly off of me. But why did it land on your arm? Like, what's the reason it did that? What are the reasons why my cats are going to be running around outside, and at very frequent points they stop and they look around? Maybe it's to check for danger. Maybe it's just to like take in a lot of that right brain stuff. They're not actually looking for anything. They're allowing it to themselves to receive what's happening in the environment.
Orient
And
to
we
the
just don't
world.
give ourselves a lot of opportunities like that. And there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of magic that's in those pauses, at the stoplight, at the transition between tasks, in those moments where there isn't music playing or there isn't somebody talking to you and you're not thinking about anything specifically.
Did you
Are
just
you giving
vote?
me thumbs up?
No, I didn't do that.
What is this?
It just automatically did that. Just like the AI of the program was like, good point, Jess.
Thank you, computer.
Yes, thank you, evil overlords. That's crazy.
Weird.
Yeah. She probably did it. She was probably like sneaking in there. Oh wow, hey, the AI thinks I'm a genius.
It's so smart.
I was gonna say the fly probably landed on you because you smell like trash, because dealing with garbage bags all your
My
life.
husband can't take out the trash.
That's because I'm 4,000 miles away. So take that into your struggle pipe. Okay, anyways. It's true though, right? They take a pause and they orient to life, or orientate, however it's said, orientate. They align to life a little, right? They take it in. Okay, now what's my next move? And I think the funny part there, the tricky part is often the pause isn't long enough, so people just repeat an egoic pattern, and it's like, oh, I'm caught in this treadmill, and then that's where the feeling of insanity starts to set in. Like, okay, you just keep doing this and it'll work, right? Eventually, if I bang my head on the concrete wall, I'll get through it. What I would say that is this: when we start looking at moving out of struggle, suffering, into perseverance, and then ultimately into what we honor, the highest value, or maybe values, but that you serve, is the steps should create connection, and connection to yourself. So if I'm suffering and struggling, to move it to perseverance and make it a worthy cause, worthy movement, whether it's big or small, we're using words like cause and movement and purpose, and it could be as like simple as shifting a small household pattern that you do, definitely, and that's most likely what it's going to be, and it's probably going to be the removal of a pattern, not some Herculean labor, but a connection. Do I feel myself more? Do I connect openly, genuinely to others more? And then it's like, well, this is worth fighting, because if I do that on a bigger scale, and that's the thing, we have to zoom out. It can't just be me for me and me for my next of kin. We have to start looking at that zoomed out. Is my actions connecting mankind on a deeper level? And then ultimately, depending on your philosophies and point of view, it connects us to the universe or God or Allah, or whatever your deities or deity might be, or however you view that. Then, it starts being like that. But this is where we get into turf like religious zealots, on both sides of the fences, or all sides of the fences, right? And it's like, I believe this connects me to God more, and that's why I'm doing it. But if you zoom out and you really start looking at it, it's like, well, no, you're actually just living out this other person's twisted views, and they've twisted you into their views, and you're kind of doing God's work with the devil's pride, really. And that's where it can be really tricky, right? Because those beliefs can be instilled on you from a very young age. And so it might look like you're persevering, and it might look like you're living out a life of honor, which I think verbally can be used together with death, right? You know, lay my life on the line. That's something I honor. I'm willing to fight for it. But again, if we zoom out and we really look at this, and I'm going to speak from my experience as a soldier, and I thought I was living a life of honor and service, and I was willing to lay my life on the line for this cause. But really, when it came down to it, the systems around me created circumstances where I was actually just really willing to lay my life on the line to save my own ass or the guy or gal next to me. And when I zoom out on it, it's like, well, man, my actions, I don't know if they actually connected more people or disconnected. Did I add more fear into the universe or did I detract? And sometimes, you know, like the great warriors of time have fought, have died, have killed, and it has led to more connection. I just like to think that in this day and age, we don't need to use killing as a way to um, live out our own honor. And I think this comes down to the next level. I think physical death is easy when it comes to honor compared to egoic death. Changing, I think that's the real, I like to think of a martyr as that. What do you call that? If I enact martyrdom, I'm actually killing an aspect of myself in order to change and create more beauty, more connection, and more love. Not just I'm going to lay my physical being on the line. And I see this happening more and more with a lot of the warriors that I fought beside, where they come back and they're like, well, what's it all for? And you know, they're struggling, they're going through complex PTSDs, and they have like physical and psychological wounds. And really, when they're scratching at it, they're like, well, it was all fucking stupid. You know, why are we killing each other to try to achieve these things? And if you follow the thread back, you'll see these certain folks that really seem to benefit from this. And that's how it's been throughout history. Now, not every single time, you know, like how does, you know, no greater love does a man have, you know, I don't know how Jesus said it in one of the gospels or whatever, but basically, you know, to lay down your life, it can be a very noble gesture. And so anyways,
So, sorry,
go ahead.
one sec. So,
I know.
are you, because I'm wondering if people are thinking, like, are you anti-military? Like, what are your thoughts on military then?
I'm not really, you know, well, not fundamental. I'm not absolute on anything. It doesn't mean I'm like flaky, but there's not too much that's black and white, pro-military or against. I think if we look at the essence of how the military works, most of it is to tamp people into a fear mindset and then sick them on a fear mindset. And the thing with that is fear breeds fear. Fear breeds disconnection. Fear, you know, if we look at the relative amount, like of like how much we're at war now and whatnot, and the cause and effects of those, which are probably immeasurable. People are more unhealthy, more disconnected, you know, than ever. That's a fact. And so what we think is working isn't working. And
Yeah.
again, these aren't absolute statements. There are many good things that have come from it. And I just believe that we're at this crossroads where people feel less purpose. I don't know too many people that would properly, or in my view, maybe not properly, use the word honor and what they honor. And I've like really thought about it. And like, it's a bit of a dying word, you know, it kind of, for lots of people, it might conjure up like a Spartan image or something like that, or like a Kuan Yin image, you know, or even like more modern, you know, like an MLK or something like that. You know, these people who have these beautiful visions and they honor it and they're willing to do not anything. Most of what they do is give up aspects of themselves that don't serve that honor, and that's most of the battle. And then because once that happens, then you're projecting truth, and people resonate towards truth in really beautiful ways. It's a vibration that doesn't need proper words. It's just the essence of it flows, you know?
You know who you remind me of? You remind me of Job on Arrested Development, where he's like on the news and he's like, I
Come
know you're
on.
gonna add this to say, I know you're gonna add this to look like I killed him, you know? Like, and then they edit together to make it look like he killed the guy. Like, you say all these like little sound bites. I'm like, oh my God, I hope to God nobody just cuts out that sound bite and just uses that in context. You'd be like the perfect person for that.
Oh, good. I'm Job.
That's
It's an
okay.
illusion. Um,
Um,
okay,
yeah.
well, I want to ask you something, Jessica.
Mhm.
Um, what do you think honor is? How do you like transition from, you know,
Mm.
it's funny when I talk about this stuff, I can't help but think of like kind of the lineage that like seminary and, potentially Christianity and Catholicism had, where like as you're moving up the ranks and God is testing you and like, do you really honor God and love? And, and you're like, oh, I do. And then you're like giving up all these like impulses and emotions, and some of them you should or shouldn't. I don't know. I'm not saying which ones are, the morals of Christianity. I'm not going to dive into that because
Yeah.
obviously that's not my turf. But anyways, you know what I'm asking.
Yes. So you're chatty today. I love it. You're making my side very easy. Uh, when we look at honor, the way that we're using it is acidic state. And acidic states are in the Hindu religion or philosophy at least, it's the yogic superpowers. It'd be at the same caliber of enlightenment as being literally invisible or being boundless or being timeless, like timeless meaning existing forever, right? Like there are these states of archetypal states of existence that give us little hints of what it's like to be truly enlightened, which is not a human experience. It's something different. So it's really interesting to think of honor as being in this class of this grouping of words, I guess, or
States.
states. Yeah. Because right, we think of honor and we may generally think of these really beautiful military movies. Like that's the first thing, the only thing I think of when I think of the word honor is military.
Beautiful.
And it's like laying down your life for an ideal, something being so important you're willing to die for it. Is there anything in my life that I would be willing to die for? Well, that's interesting because when I consider that, I was like, I'm gonna die anyway. Why not die for something? And it doesn't mean my life has to end early. I think that that might actually not be the thing, but that my life is so purposeful that at the end of my days, I could be on the other side looking back and be like, yeah, I did the thing. At least I tried, rather than the alternative, which is I lived 75 years of not having very meaningful moments. And hopefully my kin will pick up this very like saggy torch of mine and not really know what I stood for. So yeah, I've never really like actually thought about that question until you asked me, but I feel that I am on track to understand what I honor. I know that my life's work it's pretty laser focused. Am I actively dying for that? Maybe.
I don't know if you necessarily have to actively die, right? See, to me, that's the potential of the fear-based view of it, where maybe if you switch that around and it's more of like a fueling and it's a living and it's this love-based version of it where it enhances your life and it adds longevity. And there'll be moments where you have to plunge your hand into the muck. There's no doubt about that. And then you'll tax your systems and potentially, well, if we look at it like shorten your lifespan or health span. And I think that's the key right there, is like really looking at it. Like you said, I don't know, but the thing is
Well,
when push
so
comes
one sec. I don't fully agree with that. And I want to agree because I'm an agreeable person, but I don't agree that I think there is a death that needs to happen with honor. There are a lot of other acidic states that are more life focused, but there's something very death focused about this. And sure, maybe it's metaphorical and transformative, but I don't want to like soften this by
Oh, that's a
saying
good point. Yeah.
that.
No, that's a very good point. That would go back to what I was saying about like egoic death, about um, which I think is actually harder than physical death. You know, a lot of physical death is very quick and boom, it's over. Some of it can be drawn out, of course. You know, there's a lot of ways to physically die. It's just, yes, parts of yourself that have to be given up. Like I like to think of when you're truly giving up something in yourself that's not for the greater good. It's like, you know, like a cheese string, when you pull a cheese string apart. But like I picture that on my nerves, you know, like this non-serving string of cheese on my nerves that is that painful, you know, like running like a bow on a nerve, you know. Could you imagine ever doing that? Like just like something like that. That's how it feels to me, almost like that. Like you're pulling out a part of yourself from within, and you got to do it from almost like, obviously it's like a within state, but like you got to like pull it out of you. That's how I kind of visualize a little bit of it, among other many ways. And so, yes, I agree with you that there is going to be a part that dies because you're not brought into the world. I don't think anybody is. Maybe there are, with a perfect system that'll move you to, like just mentioned citic states and whatnot. And I kind of liken them a little bit to like on the spectrum of consciousness, more towards like an enlightened state where you move into like perfect harmony with the universe. Um, you know, maybe a little baby is perfectly born into that level of consciousness, but we're definitely moved off course a lot through life. Maybe not even intentionally. And so as you gather all these ebbs and flows, some of those will have to be removed. Some of them won't. Some of them will power you up and there'll be, you know, arrows in your quiver for this adventure. Um, and yeah, but it's
Yeah, I
interesting to think
mean,
about like, but I
yeah,
also
it
think,
is.
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, it is an adventure. Like that's the thing. It would be like it's what's the show, Flight of the Conchords? He's like, it's a story about two guys who started at the top, worked really hard, and ended up at the top. You know, it's like if we started at the top, no one would want to watch that movie of like a person that was born perfect and ended up perfect. And like that was like, what? The reason why we don't like that is because it's just not our experience. That's just not humans. That's not humans. It's not a story about being human. So we don't get it. We don't find it interesting. It's not our thing, you know. So these deviations away from perfection are the game. That's the game board that we're playing.
The funsies of life, huh? Um,
Yeah.
Obviously we could go like a million directions with all of that. I just, I want to go back to the honor
Yeah.
because like, I
Finish it up
know
for us.
well, I'm going to put a bow on this thing. Okay. Um, it's a tricky one because even think about like the act of literally leaving your life behind for something, to know the full extent of that, like cause and effect, you know, the way it'll unfold, the butterfly effect of it all is so massive. And that's why it takes an organized mind to start really developing these things. That's why it's scary when someone else puts honor, like what you should honor, into your head. And that there's a reason you think about war. You know, there's it's basically the only place it's used. And that's a bit unfortunate because oftentimes the people who don't want that battle, not because they're scared or they want to run, is actually the more honorable cause. You know, it's just when you're fighting people who want to like lay down their lives, it can be it's a tricky fight. And anyways, or unkilling people,
Unaliving.
unaliving.
Okay. Uh, I think that right there is what drives me so crazy with I think this organization that we were just started the show with. I'm just gonna say, are you kidding me right now? because wealth, money, those are the things that we've been told that we die for. As soon as we're brought up, a lot of us are designed to be professionals, and our parents hope that we go to college so that we get a good education. Why? So we can be smarter? No, so we can make money, and so that we'll be successful, so that we can be happy, And it's like being resourced comes in so many different formats. But when we focus so much on the capital of finances rather than the capital of friendship or relationships or meaning or experiences, then we have these lives that are so one note, that are so uninspiring. And I think that's why I watch a video like that and I'm just gonna say, like, I'm I'm thoroughly grossed out by it. I know the intention is good, and that's why it's hard for me to say here. I know the intention of good is good, but it just seems so dangerous to put a warrior element behind wealth making. It's like icky. It's so icky.
It's the sharks of Wall Street, eh? And you're kind of
And
funny.
like some jank ass Wall Street, like not even Wall Street. There's some cool stuff about actual 90s Wall Street. It's like horrible, but kind of cool. This is like some leftover, no style, like yuck.
Jess was worried about what I was saying. Here she is with like anti-capitalist sentiments and calling people out. And
Hey, I'm an American. I'm all for conscious capitalism. But when people are going to use ancient technologies that should be used for embetterments and they use it for like to be some pretend president, it's just, I don't know. It's
I
gross.
think if I just like a discussion, I wouldn't use the word it comes from a good place. I think we do that. That's a tolerance statement. A lot of the modern world is built on a concept of tolerance, which is old school now. That's not high consciousness. Tolerating something means you're still not accepting it. And that's where that mindset comes from. When in that statement, you're like, okay, it's good. I tolerate it. I'm not really for it, but I'm kind of like softening the blow. I would say it comes from something like his genuine place, because I don't think it's good. I think
You
when
know
you
what?
add into the sandwich, you're not doing good work. You're doing the opposite of good work. And so to capitalize on people's emotional vulnerabilities and insecurities for your own gain, and like, Jess and I are making some assumptions here. We don't know. We've not been through all the programs out there in the world, but you start to kind of just see it and you can feel it. And it's like, oh, you're going to try to capitalize on these insecure men, and you're going to feed off their insecurities. If by chance it actually works and it makes them more, adds strength, not strong, but strength, gives them more perseverance and more resilience, then both of us, I would surely, we'll eat our shoes,
No, I'm
because
not going to eat my shoes. Getting people together for anything is better for people. You get people together to, I don't know, like say the ABCs together, there's some kind of camaraderie just by having people around that kind of like what you like. So, but I think that the danger of programs like that with that ick marketing, at least, yeah, the insides might be great, the outside is just horrible to look at, is that it turns a lot of people off to what this stuff really is. That's it. It gives this industry a really bad name, and I hate that.
yeah, kind of like I'm just playing with words, but like capitalism and God's work don't always fit
I don't
together.
have any problem with capitalism.
I'm not saying
It's the way
I have a
that
problem with it.
capitalism is
I think
used.
I think it's great. I think there's no other way we could, we've created this concept and
Okay. Listen,
oh, come on,
we're
you
not
are
going to
allowed to
get
say
into
stuff.
that.
Yeah, I'm not anti anything. I'm really
It's just, I
not.
feel like I have to do all this damage control after you go off on a tangent. My cats are upset.
Okay. Well, it's at the end of the day, it's really all about bringing more love into the world, isn't it? Oh, perfect timing, kitty.
Perfect timing. We're hungry. Um, Thank you so much. This is a really good episode. It's fun because we're talking about perseverance and struggle and
I like how you got to
suffering.
like decock the cat's butt. Like,
And it I feel like even this conversation had this energy of intensity to it, versus last week's, which was about acceptance, which had a much gentler energy to it. So it's fun how these things turn out when you really embody the stuff that comes up when we have these conversations, right?
Yes, yes. Oh, the skinny little kitty.
Yeah, she's good.
Oh,
All right. Well, we'll be back next week with another episode. We are going to be doing the next one on so we're following the Ring of Humanity. The first one was Wounded from the Outset. You must do battle with your shadows. That was this one. You must do battle with your shadows. And Understand Your True Self is our next one, which is we're talking about self-obsession and naturalness. It should be a really good one. I love that one.
That's one of mine.
Obsessed much? All right. Thank you for watching, everybody, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Thank you.